What just transpired will astound you. The rap musician Lil Mendeecees, who has been the buzz of the town, has made headlines for all the wrong reasons. A startling video of Lil M and his father, music producer Ems Harris, fighting has surfaced. You read correctly. Lil M gave his father a full-fledged public slap before anyone could respond. Incredulous, fans are scrambling to learn whether this was an outburst of unbridled anger or whether a more serious relationship between the father and kid was developing. Nobody could have imagined that it would go up so suddenly and in front of cameras after weeks of construction. However, the leaked video is widely circulated, and speculation about what led to Lil Mendeecees' catastrophic loss of control is rampant on social media. Could it be years of unsolved family difficulties, the crushing burden of celebrity, or something more sinister that we haven't yet found out about? We're going to uncover the truth behind this startling family drama, so stay tuned. It began with a dispute that appeared to be no different from their usual arguments, the type that might conclude with some grumbling and a few doors being slammed, but this time was different. It was clear that the strain had finally reached a breaking point, even after months had passed. The video, which featured Lil Mendeecees and Ems Harris in a high-end SUV parked outside a studio, revealed that the air within the vehicle appeared dense and weighty with unresolved problems. Mendeecees was behind the wheel, his knuckles almost white from holding onto it. With his hands tightened into fists and his jaw clenched, Lil M sat rigidly. It was clear from the start that this would not work out. "You always assume you know what's best for me," Lil said quietly and steadily. "You don't though, do you?" Mendeecees never takes a lengthy, drawn-out breath that seems to be burdened by all of his past mistakes. "Do you believe this to be simple?" His voice was steady but tinted with fatigue when he responded. "Being a father, especially after everything we've been through, is a walk in the park. You talk about being a parent," he remarked, his tone becoming more acerbic. "But where were you when I needed you? When I was trying to be my own man and figure everything out on my own, where were you?" The tension in the automobile was evident because you weren't there, like the storm that was building just below the surface. Mendeecees' fingers shook slightly as he tightened his hold on the driving wheel. He added, "I was doing what I had to do," at last softening his tone. "Now I was handling business, making sure you had what you needed." "But words don't mean anything if your actions don't match," he mumbled, his eyes flaming with years of repressed annoyance. "You think I'll simply forget everything? Pretend that nothing is wrong." Mendeecees wiped his face and took a long breath. "I don't expect you to forget, but damn it, can't we at least try to move forward for a moment?" The hum of the car's engine and the distant sounds of the city outside were the only sounds in the silence. It was the kind of silence that precedes a break, but it wasn't a quiet one. Lil Mendeecees nodded his head and said, "How am I supposed to do that when you don't even take responsibility, when you sit here acting like I should just accept whatever you say and keep it moving mess?" He was clearly becoming impatient. He said, "You don't think I've taken responsibility?" with a disappointed tone. He had hatred in his dark eyes. "Done better recently. I'm still coping with the fact that it erases everything from the past." He paused abruptly and swallowed hard, as though the words would hurt even more if he said them out loud. In just a few minutes, the conversation had shifted from uncomfortable to volatile, and now both men were talking over each other. With each conversation, their voices were getting louder. Two obstinate personalities who were unwilling to compromise were at odds. Mendeecees believed that his son was unwilling to acknowledge the sacrifices and efforts he had made in an attempt to put things right. "Don't get it," Mendeecees murmured, shaking his head. "No, you don't get it," he said. Then, without hesitation, Lil Mendeecees' hand sprang out and struck his father's face in a slap that reverberated briefly throughout the car. Mendeecees' head snapped to the side, his cheeks scorching from the blow, his eyes enlarging not from pain, but from sheer unadulterated shock as the world seemed to freeze. He had never anticipated this, not from his own son, and Lil Mendeecees felt suffocated by the freezing quiet in the car. He realized he had crossed a boundary that could not be uncrossed, and his hands shook as he leaned back, his chest rising and falling with deep, irregular gasps. His eyes burned with something unidentifiable, hurt, betrayal, and darker, but his jaw tightened, and his breathing was controlled as he turned back slowly. His voice was dangerously low as he said, "What the hell did you just do?" Lil Mendeecees gulped forcefully, his heart racing. He wanted to explain, but he was unable to do so. He was unsure of what would happen next because he had done it impulsively and with unfiltered emotion. It was a very lengthy pause, and he had no idea what was going to happen next. The gravity of the situation became increasingly clear as the minutes passed. When Lil M's phone buzzed, and he received the message that the altercation and the video of the handshake had been captured, his heart sank. He had hurt his father, the man he had a lot of issues with, the man who had been his compass and anchor even when they couldn't agree, and who had made an imperfect but sincere attempt to make things right. An apology wouldn't be enough to mend that wound. M's countenance was unreadable, a mask of controlled rage and profound disappointment. Lil Mendeecees stared at his father, trying to get any clue as to what to do next. They both realized the harm was done. Their relationship would be defined for years to come by this public controversy, which went beyond a simple family dispute. What would come next? Would they ever be able to escape this? Their angry exchange was already going global on social media, which was exploding with comments, speculation, and judgment, but the answers were still uncertain. Supporters were picking sides, analyzing their interpersonal dynamics, and trying to figure out what had happened before this point. What are your thoughts on this catastrophic fallout between father and son? Will Mendeecees and Lil Mez ever be able to reconcile? Or is there too much harm for Mendeecees to maintain a firm stance? Or is forgiveness possible? Please join the discussion and leave your thoughts below. We'll be the first to reveal all the details, so don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and enable notifications. Trust me, there's more to this story. You won't believe it, but in a way that nobody anticipated, Yandy Smith just set Rashida on fire. After Yandy confronted Rashida about Kirk Frost's startling role in ruining M's career, the internet went crazy, and believe me, this was the turning point. There is a whole other aspect to this complicated tale, and it all leads back to Kirk. For years, fans thought they understood the real story of M's tribulations in the industry. Yandy is calling Rashida out and demanding answers because she has finally had enough. What she just disclosed is startling the entire love and hip-hop community. What is the extent of this betrayal? For what length of time has Kirk been covertly impeding M's success? Why didn't Rashid say anything? Oh, and don't forget to listen to what Kirk did behind the scenes to keep Bam from seeking help. Hold on, there's more to come, even though this story is becoming more dramatic by the minute, where a wild turn occurs after everything she had gone through, especially after finding out that Kirk Frost, of all people, might be the reason her man's career never took off the way it should have. Yandy was determined not to let this go this time. It all started at a prominent industry gathering in Atlanta, where the atmosphere was so tense that a knife could cut through it. Although Yandy had heard whisper stories for years, she had receipts this time, and she knew she had a chance to learn the truth when she saw Rashida. He had a great work ethic and relationships with talented people, yet something was standing in his way. The doors that should have been open for him somehow slammed shut in his face every time he was about to make a big deal. A contract would suddenly fall through, a cooperation that had been promised would mysteriously disappear, or something else would go wrong. Yandy initially thought it was simply poor luck. The business can be cruel, but she soon saw a troubling trend. The same names kept appearing, and at the heart of it all was Kirk Frost, who, as anybody who has watched the game knows, isn't exactly known for being the most honest man in it. The room was busy, people were chatting, and the cameras were rolling when Yandy went over to Rashida. Yandy, still sporting an angry expression, met Rashida's gaze and wasted no time. Raising an eyebrow, Rashida sipped her drink as though she was devoid of it. He has a troubled past, as you are already aware, but this was something else entirely. Kirk had been working behind the scenes to keep me from ever becoming famous. and Yandy had good cause to think that. Don't give a damn about anything, and that's when Yandy revealed the truth about your hubby. The air in the room changed as soon as she uttered it, and people started to glance about, feeling that something important was going to happen. What about him? Rashida pulled her hair back and scoffed. I know what he did to me, and I want to know if you weren't on it, Yandy said after taking a long breath. What are you even talking about? She asked with a giggle as the gloves were removed, and her smile faltered long enough for Yandy to see. Lined up? Something went wrong, and Kirk has been playing the role of a puppet master to ensure that my man never received the chances he was due. I must now know if you participated in this or only observed it. Yandy was unfazed by Rashida's narrowed eyes. No, the receipts I have don't lie. Therefore, you should start talking. By now, there was a small group of individuals around. Whispers were being spoken, phones were being rung, and everyone was aware that you had to record drama when it happened. Rashida's smile momentarily wavered just when it appeared that things couldn't get any stranger long enough for her. You need to watch what you're saying, Mandy, Rashida murmured, her eyes narrowing, but Yandy remained unfazed. No, you should speak up since the receipts I have now are truthful. But girl, what are you even talking about? She said with a giggle. I was discussing how Kirk has been acting as a puppet master, making sure that my man and any of these received the chances he needed, and how every time something goes wrong with the deal that M had planned, it's Kirk who is responsible. You're telling me that my husband, Kirk, was involved in M's career because Rashida refused to allow Yandy to steer the conversation? How could he possibly care? Yandy stepped forward, lowering her voice just enough to keep the tension high because Mies was going to sign a contract that would take him to a new level. A contract that, shockingly, Kirk's tiny. You're going to sit here and pretend you don't know anything about connections managing to block. Yandy was aware that Rashida detested being placed on the spot, and her lips formed a narrow line. Rashida was intelligent, though. She knew how the business operated, and more significantly, she was acquainted with her husband. This sounds just like something Kirk would do, but Yandy, you're not going to acknowledge it in front of others. You've been missiled, I think. In a cool, collected manner, Rashida said, if you have receipts, show them. Otherwise, don't come at me like this. Yandy said with a sleazy smile, oh, you want receipts? Let's start with this. She pulled out her phone. When Rashida saw what was on that phone, her entire face changed. An email thread that was as clear as day linked Kirk to multiple denied transactions that were supposed to be M's big break. Worst of all, Kirk personally informed a well-known business figure that M says wasn't a good fit for a certain label. This wasn't merely a suggestion. As anyone familiar with the game's mechanics could see, it was a direct message to blackball Mendeecees from the industry, and Rashida couldn't help but notice what was